Thursday, 8:30, and it's time for another episode of Empty, a book written by Eric Ruggles. Tonight is episode 4, The Hunted and Hiding. And last week we talked about Charles's father returning, explaining that Rayden could choose 2 more powers and they would have to do the ritual. And also about the family stone and how important it was to keep it safe. We're going to pick up where Charles says they need to leave now because he doesn't want to be interrupted by the hunters, and because they didn't have a plan against the hunters yet. So they needed to leave the house and stay somewhere else for at least the weekend and then come back Monday. And here we are picking up. "Now I have a question for you," said Charles, "and then we need to leave, and you need to get to sleep. Has there been any new kids at your school in the past year?" Rayden replied, "Yeah, there have been a few. Why do you ask?" "Well, I'm just wondering if any of them could possibly be the son or daughter of a hunter. Tomorrow we will discuss this further, and then Monday you need to stay real alert at school and possibly investigate these new students a little. But you cannot draw attention to yourself. Do you understand?" Rayden replied, "Yes. For now, we need to move. We can't stay here tonight because I don't know how close they are to finding out who you really are in relation to me," said Charles. So Rayden and his mother packed up some things in their travel bags and prepared to leave with Rayden's father. Rayden's father, Charles, was a strong-looking man, and he himself was very athletic in school. Rayden's mother, Cheryl, was a very pretty woman and had an athletic build as well. Therefore, Rayden looked like he was chiseled out of stone. He was cut up, and he was pretty much a physical specimen. After getting packed, they all 3 took off. Rayden's parents in Cheryl's car, and Rayden in his car. They ended up in a Motel 8 just outside of Hickory, but not too far from the city. They pulled in, and Cheryl took care of getting the room, and of course she paid in cash so it would not be traced. She received a couple of card keys for room 216. She went back out. She parked her car. Rayden parked his car, and they went to the room. In the room, they all settled down and got into bed. Rayden's mom and dad went to sleep, but Rayden sat on his bed thinking and wondering what he was going to tell Rachel, and could he tell her anything. What was he going to do Monday at school? And how was he going to find out who these hunters were? Well, hopefully his dad would have a plan, and Rayden rolled over and tried to get some rest. While sleeping, he had the same dream, where his father and he were running from something, but he did not know what or who they were running from. He kept looking back in his dream, but he could not see what or who was chasing them. He then awoke in a sudden manner to a sitting position. He looked around the room and adjusted his eyes and remembered they were in a hotel. He lay back down and fell back to sleep. The next morning, he woke up to the smell of coffee brewing in their room. It was one of those small coffee pots you find in hotel rooms, and his father was using it. His dad said, "Hey, you're up. Let me get my coffee, and then we've got to talk about what you can do Monday at school." Charles poured his cup of coffee and then stood by the window to talk to Rayden. Charles went on to say, "The hunters are close. They know about me and know I have a son, but have not been able to put the 2 together to figure out who you are. I figure we have about 48 hours to try and figure out who the hunters have sent down here to find you. So Monday at school, I want you to try and find out who the new kids are. Possibly the last 3 to 5 years that have moved into your school, and get a list," suggested Charles. "Then we need to start investigating them and their families to see if they could possibly be the scouts and assassins sent by the hunters for you, because I think they are thinking if they can get to you, that will draw me out, and they will get to me, forcing me to reveal the stone. Then they would destroy it so they can kill both of us," explained Charles. "You're going to have to be sneaky about this, and you cannot tell anyone about who you really are, because it could put us all in danger," stated Rayden's father. So all day Sunday, Rayden sat in the hotel room thinking about how he was to approach this Monday at school. He received a text from Rachel, and he responded to her finally. She wanted to know if they were going to hang out at all that day. Rayden felt badly because they were becoming close, and he could feel the friendship turning into something more than just friends. But he had to lie to her, and he told her that his mother was upset because they had not spent time together, and they took a short getaway trip for the day. He let her know he would see her back at school on Monday. Rachel texted back saying, "That was cool, and where did you all go?" Again he lied and told her that they went to Gatlinburg to stay, and they tried to get a cabin, but it was hard on short notice, so they crashed at a hotel. Rachel did not ask what hotel, so Rayden did not say one. He figured it would be safer that way. However, Rayden got a little risky and decided to involve Rachel in an indirect way. So he asked her in his next text if she knew anyone who had just moved to Maple Valley High in the last 3 to 5 years. Rachel replied, "Why do you want to know that, silly?" Rayden did not know what to say back, so he texted that he was just wondering about our senior class and who all was new in the past because it was our last year, and I was just thinking. Rachel replied, "Well, that's a lame excuse, but anyway, I will think about it and get back to you, no matter what your reasoning is." "Thanks," was the reply from Rayden. A few hours had passed, and it was approaching evening. Rayden had stayed in the room with his whole family as they discussed with each other the fact that there is probably less than 36 hours left before things were going to start unfold, and Rayden could be found out by the hunters. During the discussion, Rayden's phone vibrated, and it was a text from Rachel. The text listed 3 names that had been new to the school in the last few years. The text listed the names of kids that moved in our freshman year. One is Jessica, the other loner, who is friends with Rachel. Charlie Banks, who is basically a nerd, who had no friends and was not involved in school too much except for the band. And the last person was Drew Barnes. Drew Barnes was the quarterback for Maple Valley High. He used to be cool with Rayden, and they were close buddies, but that ended when Drew started dating Rachel. It was not the fact that he was dating Rachel, because Rayden did not have those type of feelings for Rachel then. It was the fact Drew did not treat her good, and Rachel was Rayden's friend, so it upset Rayden. So the friendship with Drew had fizzled, and they had not been friends since then. That was toward the end of Rayden's freshman year, when all the things started to happen at home. Rachel eventually saw the light and broke up with Drew. The other thing about Drew Barnes is that his father was hired as the principal of Maple Valley High, and that is why the Barnes family moved to Hickory, North Carolina. It was Sunday evening, and Rayden was getting nervous about school on Monday. He literally had Monday to get a good feel of who the hunters might be. He kept thinking about Drew and the possibility of it being him and his father. Rayden thought for sure there had to be more new kids to move in than just 3 students in the past 3 to 5 years. Rayden's father approached him, sensing that Rayden was stressed. "Listen," said Rayden's father, "we will get through all of this." Charles reminded Rayden the important thing is we need to keep the stone safe and protected from being destroyed. We can always run, and we can find a new place to live, but this time we will stay together, promised his father. "No," said Rayden. "Then we will always be running and watching our backs. We need to stay and fight to get them off our trail and weaken the hunters again. so we have time to live our lives a little and enjoy our family, shouted Rayden. I do have one question though, Father. How will they destroy the stone? Well, if they break it, won't we be able to keep the pieces and still have our powers? Rayden asked with wonder in his voice. Yes, that is true. So if they get the stone, they need to shatter it completely. Then and only then our powers are taken from us, leaving us mortal and vulnerable to death, stated Rayden's father. However, if a portion of the stone remains, then one of us will still exist and one of us will perish. Rayden wanted to know, how could they defeat these so-called hunters and not have to run or hide anymore? Charles replied, hunters are more mortal beings, so they can be killed. However, they have become weaker in numbers in the last 20 years, to the point where maybe we can eliminate this group from existence. So let's start with Monday at school, looking into finding out who the new kids are. Charles continued to say, I have eluded these hunters for 3 years, but time is running out. They are close to finding out about you and your mother, so we need to find out about them. Once we find out about them, then we can see how many there are and develop a plan to free ourselves from this group's vengeful pursuit, Charles said, ending the discussion. Evening was approaching, and the day was spent watching TV in the hotel room with the fast food lunch and dinner that his mother had grabbed for them all to eat. Rayden was laying there just watching TV, and a text came in from Rachel. The text asked how the getaway was going. Rayden replied that it was going pretty good. Rachel then texted and asked if he had something going on with Jessica. Rayden replied, no, and why do you ask that? Rachel then texted and said she was asking about you and said she had not seen you this weekend and wanted to know if I knew where you were. Rayden replied, no, nothing going on there. Rachel ended the conversation with, an okay, and just checking to see. So see you Monday. Rayden replied, see you Monday. Night came and it was time for bed. Rayden was laying in the bed and slowly closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. Rayden's eyes were moving rapidly as he lay there, twitching and jerking. He was dreaming again, and it was the same dream. They were running from someone, and before he could look back in his dream to see the face, he awoke suddenly to a strange sound outside the door. He looked over, and his dad was not in the bed with his mom. Rayden quickly jumped up and put his shoes on. He had already had shorts and underwear on. He went to the door and pressed his ear against it and heard nothing. So he slowly opened the door, peering out, and a face quickly appeared in the crack of the door. It was his dad. Get back in the room, Rayden. I'm just checking things out because I heard a noise, said Charles. Stay in the room. Stay in the room. Rayden's dad forced the door closed, and Rayden backed away from the door. How could he not go out and see if all was okay with his dad? Rayden was about to disobey and go out the door when the door opened, and it was his father. Charles quickly shut the door and told Rayden it was nothing but just a couple of stray cats wandering around outside. Charles stated, let's get some rest. It is 2 a.m. and we need to get on the road by 4 a.m. to make it home early enough so not to draw any attention. We can check on the house and we will need to get ready for school. So Rayden dozed back off, only to be awakened with a shake from his dad, what seemed to be only 5 minutes later. So we'll stop there. Next week will be episode 5. I just want to explain that Charles wanted to get away from the home. He didn't know how close the hunters were. So if the hunters would have found out, knew everything, they could have really surprised him at the house or really interrupted things to the point where they didn't have a plan of attack or a plan of getting away. So he just wanted to get away, get out, possibly go to a hotel, motel, whatever, and basically come up with a plan in order to counter what the hunters might be doing. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching it on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the notifications, and you will basically be notified when my next one is downloaded or uploaded. But very thankful for people tuning in, and I'm thankful for all that have purchased the book. If you do want to support me, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll try and put a link in down below, and you can also purchase the book, or you can give me a good rating on Amazon. Any of those are going to help me out. I appreciate all of you, and thank you.